My name is James Holloway. I served with the United States Navy SEALs for nearly 12 years. I've done missions in more countries than I can count. Classified, dangerous, bloody. But none of that compares to what happened to me. On April 4th, during a covert extraction in Iran, I died. And what I saw, what I was shown, changed everything I ever believed about life, war, and even God. We were inserted just before dawn. Rural Iran. Near the border with Pakistan. Our objective was clear: extract a high-value defector who had intel about illegal nuclear movement. We trained for weeks. We knew the terrain, the timing, the risk. But no training prepares you for death. No briefing prepares you for meeting eternity face-to-face. We moved in under cover of night. 4 men, no backup, no chatter. I led the point. Every breath was calculated. Every step watched. The compound looked deserted, like most of them do, until it wasn't. The blast didn't come from outside. It was inside. They were waiting for us. I remember the flash. A low hum. A sound like time ripping in half. Then came the heat. Not like fire. More like my bones were being pulled apart atom by atom. My body slammed into the wall. I couldn't hear my own scream. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Then silence. Not just outside. Inside. I thought it was over. And in a way it was, because the next moment I saw myself. I was outside my body. Hovering. Weightless. I saw my gear mangled. Blood running down my face. The others were screaming into comms. My friend Rodriguez was trying to resuscitate me, pressing hard into my chest. But I felt none of it. I watched it all like I was seeing someone else. There was no fear, no confusion, just quiet. And then light. Not the kind of light you see when you come out of a blackout. This wasn't fluorescent or moonlight or even sunlight. This light, it knew me. It wrapped around me like a warm wind, like a mother's arms. I turned toward it, drawn like I had always belonged there, like it was home. And then, he came. No wings, no booming voice, just presence, authority, love like a tidal wave. He didn't need to say his name. I knew. Every cell in me knew. It was Jesus. Not the stained glass version. Not the flannel board Sunday school version. This was the living king. The lion and the lamb. His eyes, they looked straight through me. And yet, there was no judgment. Only truth. He called me by name. Not Lieutenant Holloway. Not soldier. Just James. And when he said it, it was like I had never really heard it before. I tried to speak, but he raised his hand. Before you ask, he said, you're not here by mistake. I couldn't process it. My whole life I'd followed orders, fought for country, protected others. And here I was dead? Jesus stepped closer. You've seen many wars, he said. But now I will show you the one that matters most. And before I could ask what that meant, the world around me melted. The light dimmed, and a new vision began to form. What he showed me next would shatter my understanding of this world, of power, of nations, of what's really coming. But I'll get to that. For now, I want you to remember this. I died in Iran, but I didn't come back the same. People think dying is the end. That it's black, final, nothingness. But death isn't a wall. It's a door. And I stepped through that door with more clarity than I've ever had in my life. Jesus stood before me, radiating something no battlefield ever prepared me for. It wasn't just light. It was truth. A living, breathing truth that wrapped around me like armor. Except it didn't shield me from anything. It exposed everything. Every memory. Every kill shot. Every night I drowned out the screams of war with whiskey. Every moment I told myself I was doing it all for peace. Every lie I told myself so I could sleep at night. And yet, he didn't flinch. He saw it all and he loved me anyway. His presence wasn't demanding. But I felt my knees buckle in his presence. Not out of fear, but because my soul recognized its creator. You were taught to fight with weapons, he said. But I need you to fight with truth. I didn't understand. I hadn't even asked the question yet, but he already knew. I brought you here, he continued. Not to punish you, but to show you. Suddenly, the space around us shifted. One moment we were standing in light, the next, we were above the earth. Literally, like I was standing on nothing, and below me was the spinning globe, blue oceans, swirling clouds, glowing cities. From this height, everything looked peaceful. But Jesus didn't let me admire it for long. "Look closer," he said, and when I looked again, I saw cracks, veins of darkness stretching across nations. Smoke, like invisible chains binding people to glowing screens, buildings, and money. It wasn't nuclear weapons I saw first. It was control, influence, deception that didn't look like bombs. It looked like comfort, entertainment, distraction. Then my eyes were drawn to one part of the globe, the Middle East. I saw Iran. But it wasn't what you'd expect. Not tanks or soldiers, but laboratories, men in suits shaking hands, boxes being loaded onto unmarked trucks. A language I didn't speak, yet somehow understood, flowed across the air like smoke. I saw diagrams and glowing maps, nuclear, untraceable, mobile. But then my focus shifted again. America, my own country, and I wasn't ready for what I saw. It wasn't the foreign threats that shocked me. It was the internal silence. Churches asleep, families glued to screens, leaders arguing while truth sat in the corner, gagged. "What is this?" I asked him. Jesus looked into me and said, "This is the spiritual state of a nation on the edge of fire, while thinking it's safe because of its weapons." Then he showed me cities, New York, D.C., Los Angeles, not burning but blinded, people moving like robots, smiling while shackled, and beneath them, a current, a spirit, a whisper that tickled their ears. "There is no danger. You are safe. You are powerful. You don't need God." But he wasn't done. He pointed to a single spark, a decision made in secret, by men in power, one handshake, one coded message, one untraceable warhead. And I saw what came after. Darkness, silence, not across the entire globe, not total destruction, but just enough to rattle nations, to break economies, to awaken the world. And yet, even in the darkness, I saw pockets of light, small churches filled with people on their knees, children praying beside candlelight, communities helping one another when governments failed. "This is why you're here," he said, "to speak, to warn, to remind them that the greatest war is not between nations, but between truth and deception." And then he said something I will never forget, something that's carved into my soul like stone. "The weapons of this world cannot stop what's coming. Only repentance can." I felt like I was falling again, but not down, deeper, into a vision inside a vision, something even more terrifying than bombs. What he showed me next was the real war, not between America and Iran, not even between East and West, but between heaven and hell. And I wasn't ready for what came next. I was no stranger to war. I'd seen it in Fallujah, in Kandahar, in shadow ops the world will never know. But nothing. Not bullets. Not IEDs. Not even watching brothers die in my arms. Nothing could prepare me for what Jesus showed me next. We descended. Not in body but in spirit. Felt like moving through layers. Realms stacked one over another. And each one more exposed than the last. I asked him, "Where are we going?" He didn't answer with words. Instead, he let me see. We arrived in what looked like a grand war room. But it wasn't earthly. No screens. No blinking lights. Just a vast, circular chamber carved from what looked like light and crystal. At the center was a great table, etched not with maps of land, but with time. I saw years written like rivers. 2020, 2022, then 2025. That year glowed red. My breath caught. Then I saw men. Some I recognized from the news, world leaders, military commanders, corporate moguls. But behind them stood others. Shadows. Figures without faces. Influencers not elected, never seen but obeyed. Jesus pointed toward the table and said, "They plan in secret what they could never handle in light. Then, like a page turning, the scene changed again. Now I stood in the middle of what looked like Washington, D.C. But everything was shaking. People ran through the streets. Buildings were crumbling, not from bombs but from within. It wasn't war that had hit the city. It was truth. I saw files being leaked. Secrets revealed. Not by hackers. By God. Judgment didn't come with thunder. It came with exposure. And as people learned what had been done in secret, there was chaos, rage, collapse. Jesus whispered beside me, "Justice delayed is not justice denied." Then I was taken to a different place. A classroom in Tehran. Children sat silently as a man taught not math or science, but hatred. He spoke of power, honor, glory in war. But I could see in the spirit. He was not alone. There was a spirit beside him, twisting his words, feeding his passion, turning wounded pride into fury. I turned to Jesus. "Are these the men who will start it?" He shook his head. "They are not the root. They are the fruit." That's when he showed me the origin. It wasn't in Iran, not in Russia, not even in North Korea. It was in hearts. Hearts of men who had long ago abandoned wisdom for greed, who traded truth for strategy, honor for manipulation. And then he showed me missiles. I watched them being prepared. Not many, just a few, placed on unmarked trucks, moved across borders in dead of night, bought by those who didn't care if millions died. As long as they could win a game, no one would survive. But here's what broke me. In the spirit, I saw the faces of children sleeping as those trucks rolled. I saw the families laughing, unaware of what hung in the balance. I saw churches filled with people too busy debating doctrine to discern the hour. And Jesus turned to me and said, "This is not about politics. This is about souls." At that moment, I saw the bigger picture. The war wasn't coming because of weapons. It was coming because of deafness. Heaven had been shouting. The church had been sleeping. The enemy had been planning. And God, he had been warning. But few had listened. And fewer still had repented. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Not from fear, but from knowing. Knowing that I had to go back. That this vision wasn't given to keep. It was given to share, to warn, to plead, to prepare. But Jesus wasn't done. "Before you return," he said, "you must see what happens if they don't listen." And then the vision turned dark. Not metaphorically, but literally. Darkness fell across the nations. And what I saw next was worse than the war. Everything faded to black. I couldn't see the earth anymore. Not cities or countries, not even stars. Just darkness. Complete. Consuming. But I wasn't alone. Jesus stood beside me. Unshaken. Unmoved. His light didn't cast a shadow. Cut through the darkness like a sword through fog. "This is what happens," he said, "when nations forget me. When power becomes their god." Suddenly, a scene appeared, floating like a vision on water. I saw the United States, but not from space, from within. I saw Capitol Hill, filled with men and women arguing in chambers. Speeches, applause, distractions. But behind the walls, rooms I never knew existed. Back doors, secret meetings. Not between enemies, but between allies of evil. American suits shaking hands with foreign agents. Documents sliding across tables. Bags of money. Deals not signed with pens, but with silence. "This is not treason by law," Jesus said. "This is betrayal by spirit." Then I saw media headquarters. I saw news anchors rehearsing scripts written by men in hidden rooms. I saw stories twisted, truth censored, fear inflated, and over it all, a spirit of confusion. It moved like smoke through satellites, screens, speakers, whispers disguised as headlines. And people, they drank it in. They fought each other, blocked family, canceled truth, and the enemy laughed. But the part that hit me hardest was what Jesus showed me next. The churches, sanctuaries built with stained glass and smoke machines, pastors standing on pulpits shaped like stages, sermons crafted to keep members comfortable, not convicted. I saw crosses removed because they were offensive, Bibles replaced by self-help, altar calls traded for coffee bars. Jesus' face turned sorrowful. They have built buildings in my name, he said, but I was not invited. Then he pointed, and I saw remnant churches, tiny, hidden, but burning with light, in homes, warehouses, old barns, people on their knees, no music, no lights, just prayer, desperation, hunger for holiness. He smiled slightly. This, he whispered, is where my spirit dwells. Then I was shown the Pentagon, not the structure, but what was happening inside. I saw generals meeting in urgency, maps with red lines, phone calls filled with pressure. But there was confusion. Technology was failing. Allies were silent, and the intelligence they were depending on had been compromised. Jesus said, "You cannot outstrategize spiritual warfare with carnal minds." And then I saw a room beneath a mountain. Not in America, not in Iran, but somewhere else. Cold, remote, shielded. Men gathered around a table. No flags, no emblems. They wore suits, but they didn't serve nations. They served themselves. They weren't generals. They were financiers, thinkers, planners, the kind of men who never appear on TV, but decide what TV shows. Jesus said, "These are the architects of chaos. They design collapse so they can sell salvation." And that's when I understood. The coming war wasn't just about Iran or nuclear weapons. It was about resetting the world, breaking the strong to empower the hidden, exposing one evil so another could be accepted. I asked, then what can stop them? And Jesus replied, a nation that repents, a church that awakens, a remnant that refuses to bow. I saw one last thing before he pulled me back. It was a scroll, sealed in fire. It hovered before me. On it was written in gold, 2026, the tipping point. Then Jesus looked into me, eyes like fire, heart like thunder, and said, "If they do not turn, fire will fall, not as wrath, but as consequence." The vision shattered like glass. I screamed, but no sound came out. And just before I could beg to stay longer, he reached out and touched my chest. The pain hit like a sledgehammer, and suddenly, I was back in the hospital bed. When I opened my eyes in that hospital bed, I didn't recognize the world around me. Beeping monitors, blurred lights, a nurse screaming for the doctor, tube in my throat, pain, so much pain. But even louder than all of that was his voice, still echoing in my spirit, still burning in my soul. If they do not turn, a fire will fall. I didn't know how long I had been gone. They told me later, 6 minutes and 23 seconds. My heart had stopped. No pulse, no brain activity, dead by every medical definition. And yet, here I was, alive, but not the same. The moment I could speak again, I whispered, "Jesus showed me something." The nurse thought it was the medication. The doctor assumed it was trauma. But deep inside, I knew better, because every time I closed my eyes, the scroll would appear. 2026, the tipping point. I started writing it all down. Every detail, every word, every face, every vision. And with every line I wrote, I felt like I was still there, in that chamber of light, standing beside him, hearing his warnings, not for me, but for you, for this generation, for this moment. Weeks passed. My body healed, but the burden in my spirit grew heavier. One night, I woke up drenched in sweat. I had seen fire raining over cities, churches flattened, people running with nowhere to hide. But not because God was angry, because we refused to listen. And so, he let the consequences speak louder. And that was his warning to me. It's not the warheads that will destroy this world. It's the silence of those who know the truth and say nothing. I thought about my years in the SEALs, the things I saw, the commands I followed, the lives I took, and I wept, not because of guilt, but because I now saw what those missions had been protecting. A nation asleep in comfort, a people forgetting the one who had blessed them, Jesus told me something else before I left that realm. A message I now carry like a seal on my chest. Tell them, I still love them. Tell them, I am still waiting, but the hour is short. I asked him then, what should we do? And these were his words. Return. Return to prayer. Return to truth. Return to me. He didn't ask for politics. He didn't ask for campaigns or crusades. He asked for hearts. Broken. Humble. Awake. He showed me what could happen if even a remnant rose up. I saw neighborhoods transformed, families restored, young people on their faces in gymnasiums turned into prayer halls, pastors repenting publicly, communities fasting, crying out, not for money or power, but for mercy. And I saw him respond. The skies shifted, the shadows retreated, not because the nukes were gone, but because the fear of God returned. That's the war no one's talking about. Not East versus West. Not NATO versus Russia. Not America versus Iran. But heaven versus apathy. Truth versus comfort. Light versus shadows. The fire doesn't have to fall. Not if we remember the fire that already did. The one on Calvary. But we're out of time to play church. Out of time to pretend. Out of time to scroll, sip, and sleep while the hourglass empties. Jesus showed me what's coming. Not to scare us, but to spare us. And now, I'm doing what he asked. I'm telling you, because the final part of my journey wasn't a vision. It was the message he burned into my soul. I'll share it with you. Exactly what Jesus told me to tell the world. I was never a preacher. Never wore a collar. Never stood behind a pulpit. My battlefield was dirt, dust, and desert. My weapons were forged of steel, not spirit. But that changed. The moment Jesus touched my soul and sent me back. I woke up with fire in my chest. Not pain, purpose. Doctors called it a miracle. Said I was lucky. Said I beat death. But I didn't beat anything. I met the King of Life. And he sent me back for you. For everyone who still thinks this world is normal. For every parent who's too busy to pray. For every church too afraid to speak. For every teen lost in a glowing screen while demons whisper lies behind it. I came back with one message. And here it is. Jesus is real. Hell is real. And time is running out. Not just for you, but for nations. For this world as we know it. He showed me that the nuclear threat is not imagination. It's already moving. The countdown has already begun. But it's not just a countdown to destruction. It's a countdown to mercy. God isn't looking to destroy. He's calling us to return. To turn from pride, sin, idolatry, and silence, and cry out to him while the window is still open. He told me this world is now standing in a final season, a divine tipping point, and unless hearts shift, unless truth returns to the center, what's coming will not be withheld. But if we do respond, if even a remnant rises, there will be a revival unlike anything we've seen. I saw it. Children speaking in tongues in public schools. Veterans weeping in church pews. Politicians falling to their knees in repentance. Not in front of cameras, but in hotel rooms at 3 a.m. after hearing the word on YouTube. Jesus said, I am not done with America. I am not done with the nations. But my spirit will not strive forever. Then he gave me a vision I will never forget. I saw the earth split in two. On one side, darkness, fire, weeping. On the other, light, laughter, multitudes worshiping in every language. And in the middle, a narrow bridge, people crossing it with eyes wide open. Some afraid, some bold, some crawling, but all headed toward the light. And I heard his voice say, your voice will be one of the torches. Light the path. They will come. So that's why I'm telling you this. Not for clicks, not for views, not for fame, but because one day, you'll stand before the same Jesus I did. And when you do, he won't ask about your title, or your followers, or your politics. He'll ask if you knew him, if you listened, if you loved him, if you warned others when the time came. Well, this is the time. I'm just a soldier. A man who died on a battlefield far from home. But I came back with a mission bigger than any war I ever fought. To tell the truth. To raise the alarm. To beg you to look up before it's too late. Because what Jesus showed me wasn't fiction. It wasn't a dream. It was a warning. And it was love. Pure, painful, redeeming love. You can still choose. You still have time. But not much. Don't wait for the blast. Don't wait for the fire. Don't wait for the scroll to unseal before you bend the knee. Bend it now. Cry out now. Turn back now. Jesus is waiting. But he won't wait forever. My name is James Holloway. I died in Iran. And Jesus sent me back. To tell you everything.